It sure sounds like the Phoenix Suns offered Chris Paul for Kyrie Irving. What does that mean for the Suns? What does that mean for Chris? And where do things stand with Kevin Durant? We're picking up the shrapnel from another insane day in Brooklyn on today's episode of Locked On Suns. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 6 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show wherever you get podcasts. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Tuesday, trade deadline week, and there is no shortage of Suns news out there in the world to sift through. We have a lot to get to today. Thank you once again for finding us wherever you are listening or watching, including YouTube. Hit subscribe, hit follow, hit that bell down below on YouTube. Get a notification when a new show goes up, and drop a comment with any of your thoughts here in trade deadline week related to the Phoenix Suns. If you are listening on audio, give us a nice 5-star rating and a nice review as well. Follow along at Locked On PHX Suns, where I'm likely to just throw out something crazy and just get a temperature check on Suns fans from time to time and retweet Mikal Bridges, who said, uh-oh, when he saw all this come out. You never know what's going to happen on Twitter.com, and I'm right there with you guys. Let's dive in, though. Kyrie Irving is a Dallas Maverick, and there is no shortage of Phoenix Suns connections as this story in Brooklyn continues to develop. All right, so today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Chris Paul was offered for Kyrie Irving over the weekend, according to Chris Haynes of Bleacher Report and TNT. All right, that's where we have to start. The deal allegedly was Chris Paul, Jake Crowder, and 1 first-round pick. Shams Charania had this as well. It might be other places too. The Suns have reportedly lost interest after the Nets said no to that 1 first-round pick offer, and the Nets apparently are saying they wanted 3 first-round picks, and that would have gotten the deal done. There's a lot of parts of that maybe you don't need to believe, but Chris Haynes followed up, doubled down on that report, which he said initially on NBA TV. He followed up in his podcast saying that he called Chris Paul to let him know that the Suns' reported offer was about to become public before he put it out there on TV. Not that he wasn't going to say it, if not, but just giving him the decency is what it sounded like. He then also added on the podcast, Haynes did, that the Suns were, in his mind, when he woke up Sunday morning, they were front runners for Kyrie Irving, okay? I don't feel like that level of detail, because I see so many Suns fans online who are saying that they think it was out there as leverage. Brandon and I talked about this yesterday on our live show on YouTube, responding to all of this, and it seems like Suns fans continue to believe that the Suns were out there in large part as a result of a leak that would benefit the Nets. It would drive up the price. It would put another bidder out there. I tended to think that was a little bit crazy because I just didn't think the Suns had the best offer. I didn't think Chris Paul and Jay Crowder, or DeAndre Ayton and Jay Crowder, or whatever it might have been, was going to be the best thing to get Kyrie. I kind of felt like something we'll talk about in a second on the Kevin Durant side is more of a traditional leak for leverage. Hey, the Celtics are interested in Kevin Durant. They might give up Jaylen Brown, right? You go out and you dig up some incredibly valuable pick or player, and you say, hey, we have this offer, and we might take it, But Chris Paul, Jay Crowder, a first, I'm not really sure what there would have been to gain from putting that out there, because I think the Mavs offer that ended up being agreed upon, to me, is better than that in the first place. I also don't think you have Chris Haynes getting that detailed if in fact he doesn't believe it, right? If he thinks he's being swindled, or if he just thinks it's a rumor to be putting out there, I don't think he has this sort of check-in with Chris Paul ahead of time. You also do, though, I will say, have Brian Windhorst on a podcast with Zach Lowe today. See, I just listened to all this stuff so you guys don't have to. You're welcome. You have Windhorst saying that the Suns have been out there aggressively denying that offer was made in the day plus since. But it doesn't sound like Windhorst himself was necessarily sold that denial was accurate. It might be them trying to save face a little bit. And then lastly here, the last bit of piecing together we have to do is Dwayne Rankin, salute to him, very, very good to have him out there on the road asking the questions that need to be asked in a week like this, asking Chris Paul about his name being out there, and Chris saying this, quote, "It's a business. I've seen crazier. The way I found out I was traded from Houston, you just show up to work and be a pro day in and day out. Nobody's exempt from being traded, and you find out just like everybody else." Okay? And so that actually factors pretty heavily into my view of this. I think, again, this is legit. I think Haynes would have come out harder, or I'm sorry, I think I put Chris in my notes. I think Chris Paul would have come out harder against it if it wasn't legit. If he had a reason to doubt the legitimacy of the offer that Haynes reported, if he has had a conversation with James Jones or Monty Williams in the hours since his name was reported in an offer for Kyrie, and he felt like it was garbage or a leak for leak's sake, I don't think you would have seen Chris Paul say, business is a business. We all go through it. If he didn't think he was actually going through it, right? This is also a reason, if I'm telling you why I think it's legit, I have to be honest with you. This is a reason why I have highlighted so many times recently situations where James Jones is a clear source for Chris Haynes or Brian Windhorst, all right? On episode 1 of the new podcast that Chris Haynes is doing with Mark Stein, he said that he, when he was in Phoenix for a recent TNT game, had a conversation with James Jones. Brian Windhorst, we've talked about it ad nauseum. He is clearly connected with James Jones. And so those two guys having concrete evidence that this was out there and that it seems pretty legit tells me it's probably pretty legit. It also makes a ton of sense, right? Just if you follow what the offers would have had to be, you're talking about the Suns' interest, I don't think, was ever in doubt, right? Their top need is perimeter offense. We know Jones and Booker have a relationship. I don't know how legitimate or deep it is, but we know they both have a relationship with Kyrie Irving for one reason or another. And we know Matt Ishbia would have wanted to make a splash, and their biggest need is perimeter offense, right? And so if you buy the interest, which I don't know why you wouldn't with all of those facts being pretty clear, Chris Paul would have had to be the trade candidate, the opposite part of the deal for something to make sense, right? Because you're not going to have a team with Kyrie, Chris, and Booker on it, and you're not going to trade a center or something to do that. Same thing we've talked about with Fred VanVleet. And so I just don't see why anyone would think it wasn't legitimate. If you agree the Suns had interest, you have to agree that Chris Paul would have been a name that would have been the likely offer made. He would have been in that offer. And so if we agree on all that, let me just wrap up by saying on this part, we'll get to KD in just a second, that you have to wonder now what happens, right? Is Chris Paul offended? Does he feel disrespected? Is this the last week we will see Chris Paul wearing a Suns jersey? Is this game on Tuesday night against the Nets, coincidentally, what the heck is going on with that? That could not be more coincidental. Is this the last game we'll ever see Chris Paul play for the Suns? A few thoughts on that. First, Chris Paul's not someone you want to get on the wrong side of. This is the exact reason that I don't think, despite me even having multiple shows where I brought up the idea of Chris Paul being on the table in a Kevin Durant type of trade, This is why I don't think you ever heard that come out, because it's a pretty deep sign of it's an inflection point. It's you can't go back from it type of moment. And it's somebody that, despite his age, despite the potential disagreements that might have come up as the Suns fumbled away that second round series last year and anything else that's come up along the way, this person, Chris Paul, helped you get to the finals. He helped change this organization from top to bottom, save it from the bottom. And so that's not to say that trading him would be the wrong move, but you can't unpress that button once you press it. And so with all of that said, I think the bottom line to me here on Monday afternoon at 1:45, where at any moment another trade could come through, and I'm going to have to re-record this whole show, in any of the trades we've been talking about, whether it's Van Vliet or Siakam in Toronto, something related to being a third team with Russ and the Lakers, even let's say one of the guys in Chicago, should they become available. If any of those trades felt a little bit unlikely because they would have had to involve Chris Paul, what I will say right now is those deals just got a whole lot more likely. Whatever the odds were, Van Vliet would become a Sun, tick those a little bit closer to zero. You know, if it was plus 500, maybe it's plus 350 now. And we'll just have to see where that leads us. Kevin Durant is laying low during all of this, but I'll tell you why and how the dominoes would have to fall for him to become available and to become a Phoenix Sun next. First, today's show, guys, brought to you by Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar in the world, now available right down the street. If you love delicious treats but don't want a ton of fat and calories, Built Bar is the place to start. With Built, healthy is actually tasty, and they're so delicious you won't even realize or believe that they're good for you, which they are. What makes these guys so good is that, for starters, they're all covered in 100% real chocolate. So any Built Bar you find, real chocolate wrapped around the entire thing. They come in delicious flavors: churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond. They also have fruit flavors like orange, strawberry, and cherry if you are a little bit more on that side of things with your sweets. And I'm not sure how they do it, but on top of the chocolate, on top of the delicious flavors, they maintain amazing macros too. You're never really going to cross 150 calories, never really going to cross 5 grams of sugar, but you're for sure getting 15 to 20 grams of protein. That proportion is a no-brainer, end-all, be-all. Every Built Bar is going to do it for you. That's what makes them so great. We've been telling you about Built.com for years. To order your favorite pack now, you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club, which if you live in the Valley, there is no shortage of. Really, anywhere you live, a Built Bar is going to be within a few miles of you at this point. A 4-bar box available at Walmart with flavors like cookies and cream or coconut. 13-bar box at Sam's Club with brownie batter or churro. You can thank us later, but first, head down to the store, log on to Built.com, and try one for yourself. The Nets are very clearly operating right now to save face with Kevin Durant. You can look at the offer that they accepted from the Dallas Mavericks, which includes Spencer Dinwiddie, a very good starting caliber guard in the NBA, and Dorian Finney-Smith, one of the better, as Suns fans learned firsthand, 3-and-D players in the league. Okay, they got the 2029 pick, which could be either way, which we're going to get to. But that's a trade you make much more focused on the present. If you wanted a very future-oriented trade, you probably take that Lakers trade and get 2 first-round picks unprotected in the future, maybe even some young players like Austin Reeves, and you're set up. Sean Marks is on the clock to salvage this roster based on the trade he made and what we've now heard a little bit since then. He now has that 2029 unprotected Mavs first rounder that he just got for Kyrie, a 2027 Philadelphia first round pick. I'm not sure what the protections are on that one, but that's pretty far into the future, a pretty nice pick to have. That's from the James Harden trade, as well as Dinwiddie, the Ben Simmons contract, plus a ton of good role players on decent sized contracts, Joe Harris, Seth Curry, etc. So what I want to say off the top is, if Kevin Durant gets traded, it will be at the very last minute before the deadline on Thursday. Sean Marks and Joe Tsai, who we will get to, Tsai, are going to exhaust every avenue to convince Durant to stay and upgrade this roster between now and Thursday. Now, that's not to say that we won't hear anything until Thursday. We've already started to hear things because both sides are going to be wanting to exert a little bit of influence over one another and get a little bit ahead of it just in case you do have to trade. You're not going to go from Katie's content, fine, I'm playing for the Nets for the rest of the season to Katie has been traded in 3 hours on Thursday. There's going to have to be some steps between now and then, but I just don't think if you're Sean Marks, you're going to say, all right, screw it. We messed up. The best era this franchise has ever had. We're closing the door on it because I just can't figure anything out. The first 3 calls I made to make a deal to continue upgrading this roster didn't get accepted, so I'm getting rid of Kevin Durant. No, of course not, right? So from the Suns side of things, I think it's wait and see because of all of that. Not only on Durant's side, though, okay? But also to see if another team will come out of the woodwork to bid for him. Talked about with Brandon on our Instant Reaction live show on Sunday afternoon that I think New Orleans, if they go with a package of Ingram plus picks, they could, and that's not even to mention a number of young, interesting prospects that they have, they would be able to make a better offer than the Suns. I think Ingram is better than any of the Suns' young players. He's not crazy young anymore, but for them, he is somewhat expendable considering they have Zion. He's their number 2. They could trade him, right? And then you come to Boston, who I don't buy as a legitimate suitor, but you had Stephen A. Smith throwing a rumor out there this morning on First Take. I don't know if this was before or after he almost fought Jay Williams on the set of the TV show, which was a separate thing that I don't have to talk about, but I have thoughts. Maybe DM me. That he said Boston was actively, aggressively involved in, don't be surprised if Jalen Smith, that was a PTSD flub there. Jaylen Brown is on the table. What is that phrase, on the table? Whatever. Available. Likely to be dealt. I don't buy that from Stephen A. Smith, okay? I don't buy that Jaylen Brown would even be in an offer because he's having an extraordinary season right now. He was good to great most of their playoff run last year, and he's significantly younger. He's like almost a decade younger than Kevin Durant. What that does tell me, though, more so than actually believing the Boston side of it, is that somebody's in Stephen A. Smith's ear from the Nets or from some party associated with the Nets that they're worried about Kevin Durant leaving and they want to get the Suns off the scent. They want to get some of these other teams off the scent by putting out basically the best possible offer that could be there, right? If you're talking about who's realistically or somewhat realistically available in the NBA in a Kevin Durant deal in a place that Durant might actually like to go, that would raise the price of whatever any other bid was going to be, offer was going to be. Well, you'd probably get to Jaylen Brown pretty quickly. And so it makes a ton of sense. If you remember, last summer when Durant was asking to be moved, there was the Jaylen Brown thing kind of came and went. He put SMH on Twitter, and we never heard about it again. I feel like that was an indication that the Boston Celtics probably got in his ear pretty quickly after that and said, hey, that's not legitimate. We're not trading you for Durant. And then it kind of never came back again. I don't think the Celtics ever really pushed that hard for him. We eventually heard the Celtics made an offer centered on like Derek White and a bunch of picks, and that Brown wasn't even available, right? And so from KD's perspective, the Suns have to be seen as the leading suitor. But once again, a lot has to change before we're talking about Durant in purple and orange. They have to outbid these other teams. Durant has to make it known that he wants to be traded, and the Nets have to feel like there's no possible avenues for them to use their resources to convince him with a better roster to still choose to stay. I want to quickly hit on the Joe Tsai side of things before we talk about Devin Booker's return, which we'll do here in a moment. The other interesting rumor out there here on Monday has been that Tsai was vehement about not sending Kyrie to the Lakers. That he just wanted to get the Kyrie saga over and done with in Brooklyn, but he didn't want it to end with Kyrie getting what he wanted. And it would not surprise me at all if he had, maybe not as extreme, because there haven't been as many rocky moments between Durant and the Nets as there have been Kyrie and the Nets, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if he had a similar feeling about Durant and Phoenix. Sai seems pretty vindictive with all of this, and understandably, I think, feels pretty disrespected about the way this has fallen apart, right? He handed his franchise keys to the kingdom over to these two guys. Then he did it. He doubled down on that investment by going out and getting James Harden to pair with that duo, make it a trio, and everything has fallen apart ever since. And so if we're talking about KD making it uglier to get to somewhere like Phoenix, we're probably also talking about Sai getting more angry along the way. And so all of this is another reason that, along with the many steps that I still feel like we would have to see happen before Durant would even get close to being a Sun, I think the other reality is the Suns are going to have to make a massive offer. And that's sort of the last step of the equation is, are the Suns going to do what it takes to give that Godfather offer and go over the top to get the guy that they've been trying to get for 8 months? They have to do that because the Nets are still, at the very least, especially in season when they have no real rush to do anything, they're operating from a little bit of a point of strength with all of those things in mind. Devin Booker is coming back on Tuesday. So just one more thing to make this an insane week for the Phoenix Suns. We'll talk about what he did before his injury as a reminder and what, if anything, his return will have to do with what the Suns choose to do at the deadline next. First, today's show, guys, brought to you as well by PrizePicks. You know the deal. PrizePicks came in. They improved daily fantasy sports games. That's it. They made it better. They made it playable. They made it tolerable. I used to dislike heavily some of these other games, but I love PrizePicks. I play at least once or twice a week, and it's because they figured out the part that used to suck, and they made it not suck. PrizePicks pits you only against their projections. So the PrizePicks player projections are the only thing you have to worry about. You're not playing a team, an opponent, a pool, a league, none of that. It's you versus the PrizePicks player projections, and they have them for every sport. So not just basketball. There's probably going to be some stuff for the big game on Sunday. There are probably going to be some college basketball entries going on. We have tennis, soccer, fight sports, all of it. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. PrizePicks offers safe and fast withdrawals, and they're currently operational in over 30 states, including Arizona, as well as Canada. So download the PrizePicks app now or go to PrizePicks.com to sign up today and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON, meaning if you deposit $100, PrizePicks matches that right into your account. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right, so all of the trade lunacy out of the way here. Let's talk about Devin Booker to close the show. I want to remind you, this season, Devin Booker, with him on the court, the Suns have a 122 offensive rating. That's in the 96th percentile of all players in the NBA, all lineups in the NBA. So I think it's like 2,000 possessions or something like that, a little over that. Of those possessions that Booker has been on the court, when he's out there, the Suns have an offensive rating in the 96th percentile in the league. I think this is the best season of his career when you combine his usage and his efficiency. His usage rate overall is almost as high as his, tanking seasons. His turnovers are down. His efficiency is up from a scoring standpoint. And the Suns were 18-10 when he was out there, and you have to remember a lot of that came without Cam Johnson or Chris Paul. He had a 58-point game. He had a 27-point quarter within that game, if you remember. He had multiple other 40 and 50-point games. He was a monster That all adds up to a top 12 offensive season in the NBA this year per estimated plus minus. However, it's too late when it comes to the deadline. I don't think anything he does on Tuesday against Brooklyn will change the Suns' minds about how to approach the deadline. I actually think, if nothing else, Booker will remind the Suns just how great he actually is and how much of a sense of urgency they should have to upgrade around him. I don't know if he'll have a minutes limit. I kind of think it won't be high if he does have one, just because the Suns have been so patient with his return. I mean, I was out here saying, based on the fact that he was already back on the court and doing, pool exercises and stuff out in the grass behind the Suns practice facility, I was saying maybe they just gave him the 1 month designation just to give him some space to not feel pressure to return. I don't think that's obviously what happened. They're 2 weeks past, almost 3 weeks past what they told us might be when he would come back, okay? And so I think he won't have a huge minute limit, but he should be pretty good either way because of that patient approach. This isn't going to be what we saw on Christmas where he's walking gingerly. So, the Matt Ishbia factor. Don't discount what Ishbia will be thinking when he watches Booker for the first time since he bought the team. The 4 minutes that Booker played on Christmas are basically the only time Booker has played since Ishbia's bid was accepted by Sarver on December 21st. Okay, it's not to say Matt Ishbia doesn't know what Devin Booker is like as a player. Of course, Booker's a huge part of why you buy the team, because you have a franchise cornerstone who matters in the community, who is a great, championship number 1 caliber player on your team. But I think any of us in that position would see how special he is and think pretty hard about doing everything you can to keep him happy and maximizing the support you give him on the roster around him, right? It's kind of like, I don't know, if you're dating somebody, like you like them, you love them maybe. You get to that point where all of a sudden you're in a crisis situation, you feel sad, you feel scared, you feel whatever, and that person shows their true colors and you're like, damn, I made the right decision and I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep that. You know what I mean? I feel like Ishbia kind of just married Booker a little bit here, right? He did it with some money, not the most legal way to have a marriage if we're talking about real life. But I could just imagine, like, if I'm putting myself in Matt Ishbia's shoes and I'm turning on the TV, I don't think he'll be in Brooklyn. Turning on the TV to watch my franchise centerpiece get back on the court, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, this dude is special. And we have an opportunity, whether it's Durant or anything else, to make him look and feel even better this season and beyond. I'm going to go ahead and make that happen. And I wouldn't be surprised if that timing just factored into the way that Ishbia is thinking about it. And especially if Booker can look healthy, that would just go a long way in reaffirming that this season can still be something if the right moves are made, is the way that I would put it. All right, that'll wrap us up. This episode, I'm recording soon because I'm headed to PHNX to do a trade roundtable, which if you watch that, you will already have known. This won't go out until tomorrow. Can we all just cross our fingers? Do it on my behalf. If you're hearing this, I guess that probably means there wasn't a trade because I didn't have to redo the episode. But pray for me as I yell to the earth, to my little South Scottsdale residency, that there's not anything that happens. Let's keep some peace for a little while. Let's watch this game on Tuesday night, see what Booker looks like, and the fireworks can continue maybe after that. Let's have one quiet day. Who knows? That'll wrap us up, though, guys. A big thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen. Hit follow, hit subscribe wherever you're finding us, including YouTube. Now go make Locked On NBA your second listen. Catch up with the Kyrie news and more from all of the local perspectives as well as the national perspective here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Those shows available on all podcast platforms as well. I will talk to you all on Tuesday.